Hi, I'm Annie of ByAnnie.com and Patterns by Annie. Thank you so much for joining us for week number 41 of Live with Annie. We know that there are many ways you can spend your day, and we really thank you for taking the time to be with us. Last week, we kicked off our annual SewPINK Breast Cancer Awareness Campaign, which we started in 2019 to raise awareness, encourage people to get their screenings, come together as a community, and donate to breast cancer research. We also visited with the amazing Angela Bowman, who shared her awareness ribbon pattern along with techniques for foundation paper piecing and tips for using solid fabrics. I so loved seeing all of her projects and was really intrigued by how she uses the colors and values. I got so many great ideas for new quilting designs too. I can't wait to find some time to play. If you missed that episode or want to watch it again, remember that all of the episodes of Live with Annie are available online. You can watch them on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, or by going to ByAnnie.com/live, L-I-V-E. We'll put up a link to make it easy for you to find it. To thank everyone for joining us last week, our giveaway included everything to make a set of clam-up bags. This included the clam-up pattern and add-on video, Angela's 9 fat quarter bundle of Kona cotton in magenta, a 1-yard package of Soft and Stable, and a package of zippers by the yard. The lucky winner was Geraldine Wright. Geraldine hasn't responded to us yet, so Geraldine, if you're watching, please email marketing@ByAnnie.com to iron out the details for your prize. We know you will love making these clam-ups, and we can't wait to see what you create. As I'm sure you're aware, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That means our annual SewPINK initiative is in full swing. Again, our goals are to raise awareness and encourage people to get their screenings. Remember that early detection saves lives, so we encourage you to be aware of the risks and to perform regular breast exams, including mammograms. They are the most effective form of screening and can identify cancer several years before any physical symptoms develop. To help raise awareness, as part of our SewPINK campaign each year, we reach out to our friends around the world to share their time and talents with a post on our blog hop. It's one of my very favorite parts of SewPINK. We have an amazing lineup of makers scheduled to share with us again this year, and just as in the past, the blog hop will be packed with awesome prizes, patterns and projects, encouraging messages, and more. You can find the entire list on our blog or at the ByAnnie.com/SewPINK link. On Monday of this week, our guest was our good friend Natalie Barnes of Beyond the Reef. We always love working with Natalie and the beautiful fabrics that she designs for Wyndham Fabrics. She shared a great message and a fun set of nesting baskets that she made using Our House, her new line of fabric that will be hitting shops soon. Natalie also has a generous incentive to help raise funds for breast cancer research, so be sure to check out her blog post. Yesterday, our friend Åsa of Quilt Passion in Sweden shared a wonderful Peacekeeper bag that she made using Think Pink fabric from Timeless Treasures. Åsa put together kits for her customers in Sweden and is donating the majority of the proceeds directly to the Swedish Breast Cancer Society. Åsa has had such a tremendous response that she's had to substitute another fabric with some beautiful pink roses until she gets more of the Think Pink fabric. Thank you so much to everyone in Europe and to Åsa for helping with the cause. Be sure to check out Åsa's posts on Instagram and Facebook and click through to see the other beautiful pink projects she'd shared. They are really awesome. Today's post is by Justine at Great Heron Threads. Because Justine's mother died of breast cancer at a very young age, Justine is at higher risk. Mammograms are recommended beginning at age 40, but Justine reminds us that those who are at higher risk should get them earlier, more often, and perhaps get different types of screenings, such as a breast MRI. Justine also suggests mental health support for those at heightened risk as a way to take care of yourself both mentally and physically. That is such good advice. Justine made a beautiful Bowl Me Over 2.0 bag using fabulous fabrics from the Ruby Star Society. Her post includes all the particulars, so be sure to check it out. Justine said, "This bag will be donated to a breast cancer patient at the Reconstructive Surgery Clinic at UNC Chapel Hill, where my sister cares for patients with so much love and compassion. It is my hope that it will bring a little comfort and sunshine to someone as they go through their treatment and recovery." We thank you so much, Justine, for sharing your story and that bag. It is sure to brighten the life of whoever receives it. And we really want to thank all of the celebrities who are helping us promote breast cancer awareness with their blog posts, and we look forward to lots more fun before the month is over. Time for a quick drink. A while back, we got an email from a viewer who said that she'd love to learn more about the process of making batik fabrics. We love working with batiks and thought that was a fabulous suggestion, and we knew right away who to invite to share the info with us. Our guests today are experts in the batik fabric industry, having launched their first collection of exquisite batik and hand-dyed fabrics way back in 2004. They produce gorgeous batik fabrics on everything from quilting cotton to garment fabric, and even have an entire collection of batiks perfect for home decorating projects. To tell us all we need to know about batik fabrics, please help me welcome Bruce and Diane Magidson of SewBatik.
Hello.
Hi, Annie. It's great to see you again.
Okay, wait a minute, we can't hear you, so we got to fix the sound here. Say hi now.
Hi, Annie.
Ah, there
great
you
to
are.
See you
Good.
again.
It's great to see you guys too, and to hear you. Thank you so much for joining us today. You were some of the very first people that I met when I started doing shows with Superior many, many years ago. And I have to say, I've really missed being able to connect with both of you when we do shows around the country. It's always so great to see your smiling faces and get a big hug from Bruce. So hopefully the day will come when we can all be together again. But until then, getting to visit with you on Facebook Live is a really great alternative.
It's not as good as the real thing, but I'm really happy for the chance to see you again and to visit with you again.
Yeah, we actually were reminiscing really briefly about how we had met and how many years ago it was, and how we always we got to watch for Annie. We have to watch for Annie and see what she's up to and see if she needs any help and whatever. So it was really fun way back when.
And also it was great to see you bring your inventory and products to what was it, the night before the sale that we had, the night at Houston, the night sample spree, and always see the huge cart full of stuff that you would bring to sample spree, and it was just you and your son, and you were just so under the gun, you know.
Oh, I'll tell you. I miss seeing all my friends at quilt shows, but I definitely do not miss all that work. It's like, oh my goodness, you just go. You know, you'd set up the booth and you'd do schoolhouses, and then you'd try to do sample spree, and then you had to take, and get everything put back, all the models that you'd taken out, and get them put back in a half an hour before the show opened the next day. And we were never, ever ready when the show, was ready to start. We were still putting prices on and all that stuff. So
But you always had a smile on your face when it started.
Well, we tried to. That's for sure. Well, I'm so glad to see you, and I can't wait to hear all the things you have to share. So I want to start by having you tell us a little bit more about your company, SewBatik. I know that you both had really interesting careers before you started that business, and I'd love it if you'd tell us a little bit about what brought you to the fabric industry.
Well, I started in the textile industry after graduating from law school in 1981. I decided that a career in law wasn't for me, and was fortunate that I had an uncle who was an executive in a large textile company in Los Angeles called Mary Mary Fabrics. Really one of the founding fathers of the imported textile industry. And after starting as a salesman, I transitioned to other support positions and began learning about textile production, import and export, etc. And I began working at different textile companies and started traveling to factories in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Pakistan, and eventually Indonesia. And it was a great, great primer for starting and operating our own company.
Mm-hmm. And my education is completely different. My only introduction to sewing and fabric was when I was young and in 4-H and learned how to sew. But my education was computer science. And so I, started a good majority of what I did was working with large Fortune 500 companies and helping them in their distribution centers and managing inventory management operations and trying to streamline just inventory and distribution. And that's actually where Bruce and I met. So we won't get into any of those stories, but our background of both the designing aspect and for me with technology and marketing and operations, it's sort of kind of fit. But fabric construction was not my background.
That is a really amazing story, and wow, what a great team you make. And it's really easy to see why you have been so successful, because having a background in law and inventory management and business, all of that, wow, that has to have been so helpful as you've started your business and grown your business over the years. It's really been a lot of fun to see you grow and how your product line has expanded since I first met you. I started writing patterns in 2000, but it was a few years later before I started doing shows. So I think you'd already been in that realm before I got there. So can you give us a little bit of the history of how SewBatik developed and has grown over the years?
Mm-hmm. Our first product line, and you had mentioned in 2004, was focused on quilting cotton. And we built our line of 45-inch wide fabric and 108-inch wide batik, and just learned through working with our local quilters and figuring out what were we missing. How do we design a quilt? Do we have enough fabric to really support a quilt top with its lights and mediums and darks and all of that? And our first goal was to actually have home parties. We wanted to offer our line of fabric in a home setting. And we kind of realized after a little bit of noodling and trying to figure that whole market space out that we really didn't know how people were going to have home parties if they didn't even know who we were or what our fabric was. And Bruce spoke with one of his dear friends and said, well, why don't you go to a quilt show? So our first show was in Duluth, Minnesota, a very small show, quilting on the waterfront. And we really learned a lot. And then our second show was this really, really small show in Houston called Quilt Festival. And we learned very, very quickly what we didn't know, what we did know, and where we needed to go.
We sold out after the first day.
Yeah, I mean, it was really quite something. And but over the years, we grew our presence at quilt shows and also learned more about products. And customers, I have to honestly say, are our best educators. I think we learned so much because we listened to what our customers really wanted. And that's really how we got ourselves into the garment industry as well. Was one year, I think it was way back in 2011 or something like that, we had several customers came to us and said, we can't find any batik rayon. So we kind of listened and thought, time to find some batik rayon, the best cloth. And Bruce spent a lot of time trying to perfect that right hand for the substrate for rayon. And that's where we started our garment collection from, and actually got me more involved because I love sewing garments. And I don't know, I just kind of reignited. And so we continued with our 45-inch wide collection as well as our 115-inch wide quilting cottons. and our rayon. And then you can't only have one fabric for garments. You have to have more than one. And so we then started our line of jersey knit. And so that's what we currently have right now is our focus on things that make us unique, which are the 115-inch wide fabrics for quilt backings and garments, and the garment fabric. So,
and our gradations.
Right, our gradations and things. And we'll show some of those a little bit later. But, we just really kept focusing and building on quilt shows. We've always had an online presence, but really didn't give it a lot of focus until our little quilt show world stopped last March of 2020 when COVID hit. So that really did change our marketplace. And now we're focused on more education through our Facebook and YouTube channel and things like that. So it's been quite a transition over the time period from 2004 to now.
But fun.
But fun, yes.
But fun. And wow, what an amazing transition that's been. And really, when you think about it, when you do these Facebook Lives and your YouTubes, you kind of are at your little home party thing because you're reaching people right there in their homes. And you've got that whole little community. They might not all be in the same room together, but you've kind of come full circle.
It's a great way to look at it, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really fun to hear about that and see your progress. And we really love using batiks for purses and bags because we think the colors and designs are just classic. And they're going to make a bag that's just going to be timeless. It's not going to be faddish and kind of out of style right away. So before we get into the nitty-gritty details of how batiks are made, I think it would be nice for you to explain, what a batik is. Can you tell us what makes batiks so desirable to people, and what are some of the advantages of using those in our projects?
Sure. It's really important to remember that batiking is a process involving dyeing and creating resists to dyeing that form shapes that decorate cloth made from natural fibers, cotton, silk, rayon, etc. There's no exclusive base cloth for batik or batiking. The batik fabric that we often see in the United States after batik processing is a cotton poplin. It's relatively densely woven, made from size 40 or in some cases 50 yarns. That makes it really stable and resistant to raveling or fraying. And the use of saturated colors in many batik fabrics is also another factor that makes it so desirable. The colors draw us in, me included, even after so many years.
Yeah.
And since it's a handmade process, there are unintended results that make batik unique and further adds to its beauty when compared to machine-made cloth. The unintended results often drive me crazy, but eventually I get over it and enjoy the results.
I know, like I have to tell one quick story, which is whenever we open up a shipment, and we actually just received one yesterday as well, the first thing I do is sort of like, I kind of want to step back and wonder, okay, how is this going to turn out? Because truly, since they're all hand dyed, you open up a package and you expect the color lake. It's going to look like the color lake. And when it doesn't, you have this feeling of, oh my gosh. And then it becomes a day later, you look at it again and say, okay, I guess that's not so bad. We'll just do this with it. So you figure it out, but it is that unique.
And then it becomes a bestseller.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Well, and it's kind of like I tell people when they're sewing, nobody knows that, like Trevor brought in a petit-four basket today that he made as a wedding present for his brother who's getting married this weekend. And the seams that are on the side are a little wider than the 1/4 inch that the pattern tells you to do. And he said, I was hurrying, and I said, Trevor, no one knows that those seams were supposed to be there. You're the only one that knows that. They're going to think it's fabulous. And the same thing for this. We don't know what your vision in your mind was for that fabric. We just see how beautiful it is. So yeah, I can definitely imagine that. So now that we know what a batik is, and I That's a really good explanation that it's a process, not a fabric. That's really good to know.
Mhm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how a batik fabric is made?
Sure, sure. It's an amazing process that I enjoy sharing with others. We have a video that I'd like to share with your viewers that illustrates the process of batik making from start to finish.
All right, let's start it.
The first step in the manufacturing of our batik is the preparation of the cloth. Of course, we start with a base cloth, which we're going to transform into a beautiful batik. It's produced on a loom or knitting machine and transported in raw form to the batik processing facility. When the freshly woven or knitted cloth arrives at the batik factory, it's not readily usable. It's called gray cloth, spelled G-R-E-I-G-E, at this particular stage. Before wax or dye can be applied to the gray cloth, it must first be prepped by washing it to remove starch and organic residuals, such as seeds, burrs, dirt, and stems. The washing also improves the penetration of the dye. The improved saturation of the dye is one of the reasons why batik fabric looks very similar on the front and back of the cloth. Once the fabric has been prepped, we are ready to decorate the cloth through the use of molten wax and dyes. We do this through stamping or hand drawing on the cloth. Stamping involves the use of a copper stamp called a chap, spelled T-J-A-P, which is created in the image of the batik motifs that it intends to produce. Think of the chap as a cookie cutter on steroids. It's a stamp made with narrow strips of copper that are twisted and shaped into batik designs that are attached to an open metal base. This is a very extensive and underappreciated process. In my opinion, the creation and assembly of the stamp is an independent art form, with the final result often used as a display item or piece of art. The production process for making the stamp begins when a design is sent to the stamp creator as a black and white sketch. At SewBatik, we send our designs as a black and white digital file. Upon receipt, the image is meticulously transferred to grid paper that takes into consideration size and shape limitations of the available manual technology. The thought is to morph the sketch into something that is beautiful, yet also achievable during batik processing. Eventually, there is an agreement between our office and the mill about necessary design modifications. At that point, the stamp is produced using basic tools that you would normally find in a high school geometry class back in the 60s when I was in school. A protractor, compass, and a ruler, plus a tin snip, gets the job done. The design elements for the stamp are created by hand using small strips of razor-sharp copper. The elements which make up the business end of the stamp are attached to a wood block or metal base. Afterwards, resin is applied to the stamp to stabilize the copper when it's polished. Eventually, a beautiful copper stamp comes to life. Let's take a look at the remarkable process of creating the stamp on video. So here you can see the artist has a design in black and white, and he's using a simple compass to etch on razor sharp copper. He's going to use a tin snips to cut slots in exactly the places where he's etched it. And you can see the beginnings of the stamp at the very bottom right edge of the screen. Those slots will be seated on the copper partially assembled stamp. using the slots that he is now cutting. He's opening up the slots so that they seat very easily on the support arms of the copper stamp. Now he's going to flatten it out. And then trim it to size. Making sure the openings are wide enough so that they'll slide on easily. Again, cutting it down to size, matching it up with the sketch to make sure it goes in the right place. And now preparing the stamp. Each one of those little motifs is created by the confluence of many sharp pieces of copper. And there you can see how it's slotted on the supporting structure of the stamp or chap. Making sure it's placed in the right section of the stamp. And there you go. It's seated right where it's supposed to be. Now, this is just to seat one piece of copper. Each stamp calls for dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of sharp pieces of metal that are artfully shaped into the correct position. Once that's done, a handle is fabricated and soldered onto the structure that was created by the artist using those small pieces of copper. Because copper is so expensive, many times the handle is made from another type of metal, in this case tin, because it will conduct heat less than the copper will and make it easier for the person applying the wax to hold on to for long periods of time. And there you can see he's, painting flux in strategic points to get it ready for soldering. Afterwards, the partially assembled stamp is seated in a pot on a blazing fire. Inside the pot is a resin. And the idea is for the resin to infiltrate all the empty spaces and after it's taken out of the pot, the resin will become solid and stabilize all of the fragile design elements created by the relatively soft copper. As you can see in this case, the resin cooled down and has been removed from the pan. And then the technician has to use something, in this case, a piece of charcoal, to smooth out the working elements of the copper so it's not so sharp that it will harm the fabric that it's applied to. And as you can see, the value of the resin and how none of the soft copper elements move when it's being abraded. After the design elements have been abraded, it is placed back in the same pan and placed over a fire so that the now hardened resin liquefies once again. and is removed from the stamp. After, it's shook out, we have a finished copper chap. And what you're looking at is SewBatik stamp number 1021 Vine.
Yep, I recognize that.
Once the stamp is ready, we can begin decorating the cloth. In many situations, base colors must be applied to the fabric before it is stamped. To do this, the cloth will be placed on a cement floor in the factory, and the colors are applied by hand. In these slides, you can see several instances where the base colors are being applied. Here you can see this gentleman is using a spatula to make sure that the accent colors are put in the strategically right place. In this case, wherever you see the white points that have been created, that those are the places where he is placing this dark blue accent fabric. There you can see a closer view of what he's doing. Occasionally, salts are added to create unique textures and bubbling techniques. After the base color is applied, the cloth is ready for stamping. A padded table is used for stamping, which provides the necessary give to the pressure of the stamp. The wax is melted in an open pan. And you can see the opening on the bottom near the cup where the sterno is inserted and is burning above. The batik printer dips his stamp into the pan until its surface is covered with molten wax and applies the stamp to the cloth. The areas that are covered by the wax will resist the dyes in subsequent dyeing and form the shapes that are engraved into the stamps. So let's just review the process. The stamp was engraved in the shape of butterflies. The fabric was first brought to the dye house in bleach white form. It was hand dyed the shade of blue, and now the batik stamper is applying the wax by dovetailing, by applying firm pressure after the wax, after the stamp has been dipped in the wax and placed firmly on the cloth. He then has to repeat that process, carefully dovetailing the back end of the stamp with the impression that he last applied to the cloth. He has to make sure that there are no gaps, otherwise you'll see the streaking across the fabric when he's done. Here's a close-up view where you can see he's dovetailing the back end of the stamp to where he just applied the wax. Here's another example of the same process. The bleach white fabric was brought to the factory. In the dye house, multicolor blotches of dye were applied to the fabric. The stamp, which in this case was engraved in the shape of a flower head, is dipped in the wax. The wax is applied by the batik artist, and the rear end of the stamp must dovetail with the forward image of the previous impression. There's a closer look. You can see it right there. After the wax is removed, anything that is covered by the wax will be visible. Everything else will be overdyed and no longer visible. Let's take a look at some video while we see this process occurring. First impression being applied to the fabric. It'll harden quickly, so it can be hard to the touch. Okay, he dovetails the second impression, so you can barely see them matching up. He moves on to make a further impression. This Batik stamper is really moving at a good pace. And what he's producing right now is the bottom panel of a sarong. Look how quickly the wax hardened. He placed his hand on it and there was no smearing at all. And he's so dexterous with this, he can touch up any gaps or defects with the corner of his stamp. This fellow is really good at what he does. Let's see someone else doing the same thing, just a different application. He's making his first impression, this time on the top panel of what will become a sarong, applies the necessary pressure, lifts up, reapplies the wax, and dovetails the back end of the stamp to the impression he just laid down. Lifting up, you cannot see any gaps where the stamps met. And he continues the same process. Depending upon the desired effect, it may be necessary to dye the cloth after stamping. The blending of the dyes and the timing of the dipping are important factors. The dyeing is done in large cement baths. This process is repeated several times, depending upon the colors and the complexity of the design. Here is a video of the overdying being done in a cement hopper. In this instance, the fabric is brought in bundles to the hopper. The dyes are applied one leaf at a time. He waits for the fabric to be saturated and then moves on to another bundle. If you look carefully, you can see the shapes of the motifs, and anything that is covered with wax will resist the dyes that are now being applied. After this process is complete, the wax will be removed, exposing the dyes that are now being applied. Here's that fellow's neighbor. You can see readily the shape of the motifs that were created by the hand stamping. Like the last fellow, he applies the dyes to each leaf in the fabric bundle. He smooths it out to make sure that it's all saturated and advances to the next leaf. When each leaf in that bundle is thoroughly saturated, he will place it on the bar above him and allow it to drip dry, and then he moves on to the next bundle. After the cloth has been dyed, rinsed, and dried, the wax is entirely removed by dipping in hot water. The wax is often saved and reused. The cloth is then washed with a mild detergent and rinsed twice to remove excess dye. After drying in the sun, creases are smoothed out by an electric press and folded. Let's watch this person remove the wax. It's really an important part of the batik making process. This room is open air. There's no ceiling. It's probably about 88 degrees and 90% humidity. And there's a blazing fire underneath this cauldron of near boiling water. That fabric was previously waxed and dyed at least once. He dips his bamboo rod into the water to lift out the now waxless piece of cloth. Now, if you notice, the bottom of that might touch the rim of the cauldron. And that is why sometimes you can see little flakes of wax on the finished batik from us or from any fabric store. It's because he's unable to lift it high enough to always clear the rim of the cauldron that has some accumulated wax on it. Afterwards, this goes on to the quality control folks who use their tools to remove any residual blotches of wax that may have survived the previous process. At this point, the fabric is rolled on tubes, measured, packed, and then brought to the airport or the harbor for shipment to the United States. But now that we have looked at the processing of stamp batik, let's transition to another lesser known method for batik making called hand drawing or batik chanting. Hand drawn batik involves the use of specialized chanting tools by highly skilled batik artists. The chanting is a small copper container with a long, slender spout that resembles the bowl of a pipe. The chanting is filled with molten wax and held like a pen. The main elements of the chanting design are first penciled onto the fabric. The batik artist follows those tracings with the wax that flows from the chanting's tiny downward curving spouts. Many of the designs created by this process are extremely detailed. However, experienced artisans can wax these designs from memory. Batik workers sit on low stools with the cloth they are working on draped over a bamboo frame. Next to them is a simple kerosene stove with a small iron wok that is filled with molten wax. From time to time, the artist blows on the tip of the chanting tool to secure an easy flow of wax. The wax must be hot enough to flow, but not too hot, so it completely empties the small container in an uncontrolled manner. The number of spouts, their widths and endings can be varied to achieve different effects with great precision. Let's look at video showing how the chanting artist goes about making this wonderful fabric. So you can see that there's already molten wax in her chanting tool, and she's applying it to the fabric. Here, she's doing it once again. She's blowing on it to make sure it's not too hot and flows too freely. And this particular artist is following the tracings that are already etched onto the fabric. Another example, closer up, you can see the etchings on the fabric. And the wax is being applied and covering the pencil tracings. Imagine doing this from memory. There are many, many of these folks that don't require the tracing on the cloth. They've been doing it for decades, and their parents were doing it for decades, and likely their progeny will be doing it for decades. Here's another artist with his own unique technique for holding his chanting tool Again, applying the wax, gently following the tracings. One last video. So the word batik in Javanese means to dot, and you can see the significance of dotting. Each dot will create its own tiny resist when the fabric is subsequently dyed. Anything under the wax will resist subsequent dyes. Anything that is not covered by wax will receive the coloring from the dye stuff that will be over dyed. An amazingly dexterous person can only do this. These slides show examples of batiks created by the chanting method. Look at their detail, look at their colors. These designs could not be duplicated by even the most modern textile producing techniques currently employed in most quote unquote modern textile market mills. These batik fabrics are generally made in approximately 3-yard lengths and take weeks to complete. Because of the labor and the special demand in Indonesia and many other parts of Asia and Europe, these fabrics range in price from $25 to $500 a yard. Quite amazing, don't you think?
Oh my gosh. That was so fascinating. I had no idea that there were so many steps involved in that. And one question I had is when they're making it, you said they fold each fold over and then they dipped them. They didn't look like terribly long pieces. Do they have like a set length that they do each time, or?
Well, it depends on the work that's being done, the intended purpose. So, for example, those folds were probably for sarong, and sarong measures about 3 meters.
Got it.
So that's why you didn't see a very huge bundle being overdyed.
Got it. When they do yours, do they do much longer pieces then?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to do at least 15 yards. And if you think about it, and this also goes back to the guy that's taking the cloth out of the boiling water. You think about sopping wet, 115-inch cotton, 3 yards long. That's a very heavy piece of cloth.
Yeah.
And likewise, the overdyers working with special troughs that were made for us because we introduced this. Their troughs were sized for narrow width. And so the troughs that are used for the wide width are larger by necessity, and the bundles are longer and heavier, especially after it's sopping wet.
Yeah. Wow. So wow. They probably cringe when they see you coming, Bruce. But wow.
For many reasons.
For many reasons. Wow, that's amazing. So yeah, that brings me to my next question. Who does these designs and who chooses the colors? Do you do that all yourself?
I'm primarily responsible for the development of the chap designs and colors, but nevertheless, before pulling the trigger, I sit with Diane and we make final decisions together.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. When that actually probably is another really good thing about actually being more in our office and being home is the ability to really have the mindset to create. And so that's given Bruce a lot more of an opportunity to think about new designs and, plan a collection of maybe a smaller design, a larger motif, a hand-dyed collection that goes with it. We try to really build a collection that makes sense, that you can, if it's for garments, that you can make something from And if it's for quilting or home deck, also that you can make something from. You know, you have to be able to work with the fabrics that you have, and same with the colors. Not every color works together in a dye, you know, in a design, and so that's where Bruce is really amazingly knowledgeable.
I mean,
Well, yeah.
think
I mean,
about
as
it.
I watched that, it's like, how do you keep from getting just mud that when you put all those colors together?
You can't over dye until the first layer is dry.
Uh,
And and there's a rainy season in Indonesia, and it's about to start, and it continues through almost May.
wow.
And batik production crawls to a halt because uh, it takes longer to dry the fabric, but even more importantly, sunshine is involved in the chemical reaction that gives the dye stuff their fullest bouquet of color. Without sunshine, everything looks drab when it's even after it's dried. So you can, I can't tell you how many times in previous life that I had to go before a buyer and they were demanding, where's their fabric? It's 8 weeks or 10 weeks. And I said, but it's raining. There's no sunshine. And
They
you
didn't
could see that
understand that at all.
they didn't understand it.
Huh. So
But
they don't
that,
dry it in a dryer. They dry it outside in the sun.
that's correct.
Wow. I'm amazed
Yep.
that fabric isn't $1 million a yard. I mean, all of
Bingo.
those steps and all of that to consider, my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
And I
Yeah.
think the point that I enjoy so much about it, and I've watched this and know the process so much, is the whole point of how you make the stamp is amazing. I mean, just the artistry of that. I mean, everything is built from this design and this creation, and how accurate it is, and level, and just the whole thing, and how that accepts the dyes before it hits the fabric. This is the piece that just is amazing to me.
well, and how it joins from one piece to the next when you line them up, and it's seamless. You don't see that. I mean, your repeats and your knowledge of designing that is phenomenal. Wow. How did you
Yeah.
learn that, Bruce?
You know, I was allowed to accompany people to the factories. And I learned by observing, and eventually, and I showed an eagerness to want to do it for a living. And people allowed me to be in a position of learning and making decisions. And
Wow.
eventually it became it was very enjoyable. I really loved doing it and learning it. And really, I spent most of my career making woven yarn dyes and prints. I mean, I'm a printer by trade, but about 20 years ago, I went to my first batik factory on a Sunday when there was no work that could be done in Indonesia. I was making a rayon crepe for a very large dress company at the time. And there was no work that could be done on a Sunday. So my agent said to me, Bruce, would you like to see how batiks are made? And I was in a mind-numbing mood. You know, it was all I wanted to do was go home. You know, you're away from home for weeks, and yeah, sure, that'll be great. And so we take this incredible taxi ride through the mountains, and we got to this batik factory, and I started watching and observing, and I really caught the bug. And every time I went to Indonesia for another purpose, I learned more about the process of batik making. And eventually I brought it back to my employer at the time, which actually was Timeless Treasure. And I said, you've got to get involved with this, you know, and to their credit, they let me do that. And in the short time I was there, I really learned a lot about batik making and was able to do that for many years to come.
Yeah.
Wow, that is just fabulous.
I will tell you, he he tells me stories that he tried the chanting. However, however, it is truly an art, and he was asked to probably do something else.
Yeah, I made a mistake.
So tell me how is that spelled? CHAMPING, champ?
TJANTING.
Oh, chanting. Okay.
Yeah. But you can, I don't know if you can see it looks like a pipe, and the copper is where the wax is placed, and you can see the opening inside, and this is the tip. This is a very this chanting only has one spout, and it's a very narrow diameter, so it's for very fine detail. They make them with multiple spouts, and some of the spouts are even much wider, and so you can cover more area, more space with one stroke. Wow. And it's really amazing. And the first time, the only time I ever tried this was they let me try to decorate just following the etchings that were on 3 meters of expensive silk, and I didn't blow hard enough on the chanting. All the wax flowed at once out of the tool, and I totally ruined this cotton. They immediately ushered me out and brought me to the dye house.
So we have other jobs for you, Mr. Bruce.
Let's stick with this one. Yeah.
Well, keep bringing us orders and stay away.
What a talent that is. But that was so fascinating to see that, and to think that people could create those designs with no lines to follow is just phenomenal. Yeah, what artists. Wow, that's great. One other question that I had before we move on is we often work with fabrics, that they'll print them and they have a really limited time that they're available. So if you don't get them, when they're first printed, if you want more, you can't get them. Do you limit the amount of yardage that you print from your designs, or do you just keep continuing them for a longer period? And how do you determine how to do that?
One of the benefits of developing batik fabric is the absence of huge financial investment in the creation of screens and setting up print machines with 15, 16, 17 screens that cost thousands of dollars a piece. We can produce the chaps very inexpensively relative to the cost of screens. And as a result of that, we can produce small initial quantities relative to print production minimums. And our initial production runs are small for a new pattern or color combination. Once we, feel traction from our customers, we reorder and reorder until it stops selling. We rarely produce large quantities in a production run. We reorder very frequently and continue to do so for years. Mm-hmm. If the cloth keeps selling, we will continue to run the fabrics. We've retained many fabrics that we have sold for over 10 years. And while, of course, at the same time, we also produce many new items, but as we will continue to run it until our customers tell us not to run it any longer.
Yep. That's an important thing to know. But yeah, that's really wonderful too, because if you're working on a project and all of a sudden you decide, whoops, I didn't get enough for, this piece or that piece, that you can find it there. So yeah, that's really exciting. Well, that was so very interesting, and we really are impressed by what you have done with all of that. The colors are wonderful, the designs are wonderful, and as we've said, they're just perfect for bags and purses. But I know you also have them, and Diane mentioned a little bit earlier that you also do wearables and home decor. So can you tell us a little bit about all those various substrates that you use and ways that you use those fabrics as well?
Absolutely, yes. As I had mentioned in kind of our history, the batik rayon would be for garments. I'll talk about 2 different fabrics. The batik rayon, I'm actually wearing one of our rayons, and it is 100% rayon and 45-inch wide. and it has an amazing drape to it. And I'll show you a couple of garments just to kind of share the look of it. And this is a jacket. It's actually a McCall's jacket, and it's very flowy, as you can see.
So
I tried to pick a garment that you could kind of see the drape to, and I'll move it in here just a little bit for you. But it's just a great, I don't know, there's nothing really else to say besides drape, and it's washable. You don't need to dry clean. Here's a dress. This is the willow dress. And we try to have patterns that show the fabrics in their best light, is how I can say that. And so simple, we also have some structured, but here's a simple t-shirt this is that simple, elegant tee. And I think this is one of the most popular t-shirt patterns, you know, with the rayon. And this just takes 1 yard and 3/4 of fabric. So those are 3 different examples of kind of the look and drape of our rayon. We have in our collection probably
130
130
different SKUs of rayon.
Yeah, and now I'm going to show you the second garment fabric that we have is our cotton jersey knit, which is 72 inches wide. And when you think about 72 inches, I actually used it to quilt the back of a quilt just because of its softness, and it fit perfectly because it was 72 inches wide and I didn't have to piece it. And that's always my goal, is never to piece the back of a quilt. But this is a jacket, a very simple jacket. It's a new look or quick sew, one of those two. And again, this is the jersey knit. It doesn't have a similar drape to the rayon because there is a little bit of structure to it. If you were to think of a knit, this would be stretching about 20%, and it's a 2-way stretch. So we want it to stretch around you, and it is not going to stretch up and down, so you won't get any wobblies if you sit down on a skirt or a dress. It is, I don't know, I just love it because every time you wash it, it just softens up. So here is a jacket, and this is our Phoenix motif in the color of tuxedo brass. And I'm going to show you another jacket. It is hoodie season, as I call it. And so this is a cute hoodie. Again, now I'm going to go back and tell you, with the 72 inches of fabric, this only took 1.25 yards to 1.5 yards. So your amount of fabric is less, which does have a good savings as well. So this is a simple hoodie. And then here's a wonderful top by our friends at Fit for Art. And the reason I wanted to show you, this is a knit top. It has stretch, and we also design coordinates so that with the Phoenix Tutti Frutti, we have 2 different fabrics that go with it beautifully. So you can add and dress up any garment that you would like to make for yourself. And I wish I would have had the quilt that I made out of the jersey knit, but it is really spectacular. And I think it's easy to work with because it only has a 1-way stretch. So food for thought.
Diane, while you're grabbing that, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to let people know that we're hearing kind of a clicking sound, and Jake says it's from the camera refocusing. So for those of you who are watching, if you're hearing that sound, that's what's causing it. It's like a little scratchy noise.
Okay.
But
okay.
Oh, that's pretty.
That. This is a dress, and this is the most recent dress that I did a pattern review on our YouTube channel. And it's just a simple dress. And this took about 1.75 yards, and it's a knee length dress. But again, it's a pullover, simple, nice stretch to it, and easy to make. So those are some of our garment fabrics that we have. And then, of course, those of you who are familiar with our 45-inch wide cotton, I'm not going to show all of those. But the background that we have in our little studio here is our 115-inch wide collection. So we have tried to really maintain a good range of brights and fall shades and backgrounds, and just really enjoyed those, as well as our 45-inch wide gradations. And I'll pull out one of our gradations for those of you who don't know. We have about 24 different shades, and our gradations change color. Some reference them as an ombre, but from a light to a dark. Okay, and we have about 24 different shades of these, and I love working with them because you can do so many things. Similar to your prior guest that you had on, it would be an amazing display to take one fabric and make one of your clam ups and have it cut from different portions of that to show the different shades that are in the gradation. So that was a fantastic idea by her.
Yeah, you're going to have to try that. That would be fabulous.
I'm going to. That was beautiful. But those are the collections that, samples of the collections that we have. And again, the jersey knit, I think we have probably about 50 different colors and motifs in our collection right now. And so we're always looking so we're always looking to do more things, and including we're going to be working with and hopefully offering custom quilted fabric out of our 115-inch wide fabric as well, which will be perfect for our many future Annie bags that I'm going to make, because she's got me hooked.
And that will be so fabulous, because I know one of the pieces you sent me was that wide fabric, and I got a whole bag out of, a yard of fabric because of the width of that. Do you happen to have any of your home deck pieces that have like the different borders and stuff on them to show?
We have, the fabric is here.
Because I loved looking on your website and seeing the ideas for shower curtains and tablecloths and things made with those.
Yearning board covers.
Oh, okay. So like this is 100 and hopefully we can show this to you, but this is the 115-inch wide fabric, but we designed it with borders on both selvage edges. And with that concept in mind, of course, it's a backing. It's a quilt backing that's very easily put on your machine and quilted. But what we can do with it as well, and I wish I should have given you a picture to post. I do apologize for that, of like our shower curtain. And what we did with that is, and here's an ivy shade.
Yeah.
We have about 8 or 9 different shades of our double borders. But what we did is the border runs along the bottom of the shower curtain, as well as the ruffle at the top. So out of 2 yards, slightly more than 2 yards of fabric, you have a beautiful shower curtain, and possibly a matching wall hanging or a matching valance with the leftover fabric that's in the middle. So those are a lot of the projects that we have. We also did a duvet cover, simple duvet cover where the border is your border around the outside of the duvet with a mitered corner and matching pillow shams. So this is dusty denim, and the twilight blue is a fan favorite for sure. We put together, I decorate my house for the holidays. And I also, on our website, we have, this is early autumn. It's a very subtle shade, but this is a tablecloth that I have for the fall, Thanksgiving into Christmas. And so this runs, the border runs all the way around the oval of my table. And it's very simple. We have a lot of measuring guides for you to measure your table to decide on how many yards you would need for your own. But then whatever you have left over in the middle portion of the 115-inch wide fabric becomes your dinner napkins. And I was able to get, 12 matching napkins with my tablecloth, and it just makes for a beautiful, lively Thanksgiving dinner, to be honest.
And that was for a very large and wide table.
Very large table, yes. Yeah. And then we must always have azalea.
Oh, so pretty.
Yeah, yeah. And this became a tree skirt. Oh, love how it turned out. I used the border as my ruffle, but I pleated it. I didn't want it to be just a gather. Yeah. So you'll see on our website that we did the holiday tree skirts and matching place. We did a napkins and a matching apron.
Oh,
that might be a bit much.
So beautiful. Oh, so beautiful though. And I can see those borders as pockets on a bag, and do that as your accents on our bigger bags, and then the background for the body of the bag. That would be so fabulous. Yeah. Those are so pretty. Well, I know that people are going to be really excited to peruse your website and see some of those other pictures and stuff. And there's some really awesome stuff there. Before we go on, too, I wanted to talk about some tips for using batiks. Because they're washed repeatedly and they have the wax on them, I've noticed that batik fabrics have a much tighter weave than a normal quilting cotton. One nice thing is that reduces fraying. And I was actually, as we sewed these models, I was shocked by how little fraying there was. Really, the only threads I ever had to trim were my sewing threads. There just weren't any threads off the fabric that were hanging out and getting all over my clothes and stuff. So that was really nice. I did find that because it's so tightly woven, I had a hard time getting pins and needles in. So when I was doing like just pieces of fabric, I made sure I was using those extra fine silk pins because they went in a lot better than like the heavier quilting pins. I had a hard time getting those in. But I had a question for you about what size needles and what types of needles do you use, and whether or not you recommend a particular thread when you sew with batiks.
Okay, when I sew, I'm gonna I differentiate cotton from rayon from jersey knit. They're each different, but the one consistency amongst them all is the needle size. So I am always using an 80-12, unless I'm working on very thick projects like my education on ByAnnie bags. I actually ended up going up to a 14 because I needed some more strength to go through the multiple layers that I was going through with the cotton. But rayon, jersey knit, or cotton, I use an 80-12, and I recommend that because it just seems to, I don't know, it's the right size. If you go too small, your thread's going to break, and I really do like to match the needle size with my thread as well. When I'm sewing on the cotton, I really stick with a cotton or poly cotton 50 weight. I really love that weight because it just seems to blend and kind of melt into the fabric itself. And I also like to match my thread with the fabric, except for rayon. So cotton is pretty easy because it's cotton and poly, but rayon I sew with polyester. And a 50 weight most of the time. And I'm a serger person. So if anybody out there is working on a serger, I put a heavier thread in my loopers. So that's going to be a 40 weight. And I put a 50 weight in my needles, just to always make sure that I'm working with the right thread. And when I'm working with my jersey knit, you need to have a jersey or a stretch needle. And it has to be ballpoint because we want it to go through the threads, like really not break any threads. We want it to go through. And I use primarily the same thing with the rayon. Actually, I use a cotton when I'm working with my cotton jersey knit because it washes together nicely. And 40s in my looper, and I put 40s in my needles when I'm working on my jersey knit. But the one thing I really want to recommend too is just really, there are times when we don't want to wash our fabric. And as you saw with how batiks are made, it is washed so many times. And so I think we have a mindset sometimes that we don't really need to wash it yet again. But it is good to, I always find that it's good to pre-wash, and it gets rid of any of that excess dyes and wax so that you don't have any issues with your needle. And I found that to be true with when you're working with a lot of projects, is just soften it up, wash it, and then when you have made a project like one of these bags or a garment or whatever, and if you want to give it away, you don't have to worry about anything that could potentially happen after it's left your house too. So I think it's just a good practice.
Yeah, that was a really good tip, because I never pre-wash fabrics. We get them in, they go to the long armor, and off we go. And I'm definitely going to remember that for the next time that we make a bag, because I think that the thing that was so interesting to me too was to hear you say that a lot of times it brightens the colors and makes them more vibrant. So that was really interesting to learn.
Yeah, because that wax is that, you saw the color of the wax. It's kind of a brownish, grayish, gold color. And if you remove that from your fabric, anything that could possibly be left
It will
on
brighten your cloth.
it absolutely brightens it up.
Also, there's some residual dye stuff, no matter how many times it's washed at the mill. Oftentimes, after you wash your batiks, the fabric will brighten. You can also use a product called Synthropol, Synthropol. It's a very powerful soap that purges any of the dye stuff that's not chemically bonded to the cotton.
Yeah.
And it removes it harmlessly in your rinse water without it reattaching someplace that you don't want it to go. Like if you have a white dot on a red background, it allows that white to remain white and not pink out.
So how much Synthropol do you put in? A cup, a quarter cup, a tablespoon? A teaspoon.
And no detergent. Otherwise, you have a Jerry Lewis moment with bubbles coming everywhere.
Okay, so do you use detergent too, or just a little bit of Synthropol? A teaspoon. Wow. I have some of that, because when I used to do a lot of quilting, I would use that when I washed my quilt, but I'm sure I never used a cup, but I think I probably used well more than a teaspoon, so that's good to know. I'll have to go put a note on that right away. One other question I had, and this is something that I run into every time I use a batik fabric. Is there a right side and a wrong side, or does it matter?
Okay. I actually, first and foremost, there is a preference. I never say a right and wrong, because there isn't a white side and a colored side. It is both. So if you're looking, for example, at this lake, Garden East of Vine, and then we turn it over, you can't tell the difference.
No.
And so don't worry so much about whether or not you've made a mistake or, oh my goodness, I forgot which side was which. Decide which is your preference, is how I say it. And you're set.
That's awesome.
Dye stuff is applied from one side only, and it penetrates through to the back side in poplin, the poplin that we are used to, making quilts with. There are, depending upon the color, depending upon the cotton that is being used, sometimes that penetration is inhibited, and sometimes you can see sharper motif edges on the side that the dye was applied on, and a little fuzzier, more gentle appearance on the back side. So like does that make it the wrong side? No. In many cases, I think it looks a little better than it does on the side that the dye stuff is applied on. With thicker fabrics like jersey, you can see a more dramatic difference between one side and the next because the penetration is not as complete as it is with a relatively thin poplin. Also, certain colors, reds, blacks, and some bright greens do not penetrate the fabric as well as some of the other colors do. So it's a chemistry involved as well. But is there a right and a wrong? No, there's not. It's like Diane had said, it's just a matter of preference.
Yeah. There is a right and wrong on a jersey knit, but that's the only one.
That's the only one. Well, that's really fascinating. And that's a good tip. I'll relax next time. So we want to, I know we're getting long on time, but we have still more to tell you. So stay with us if you can. If not, don't forget, you can always come back and watch this later. We're going to keep going because the next thing we have is a little mini trunk show for you. As Diane and I were planning today's segment, we decided that SewBatik fabrics and ByAnnie patterns just made such a good combination. So I sent her patterns, she sent me fabric, and we've both been really sewing over the past couple weeks. So we wanted to show you some of the things that we made, and we are going to put up the name of the pattern and the name of the main fabric that we used on the screen so you can see those. And Diane, I'm going to let you start because you said this was your first experience sewing ByAnnie patterns, and I was really impressed when I heard you didn't even watch any of the videos. So yay, Diane.
No. And you know, I seem to think that I can just open a pattern, start, organize my supplies, sew, and everything will work out perfectly.
Diane's not big on owner manuals.
No, no. So I did make a set of the clam up, and I made the extra large. Oh,
So
I gotta move
cute.
over here. Extra large, and just did a simple coordinate inside. And I love the pink zippers and accents. Then I made a medium, which does not have the quilted outside. I put the vinyl inside.
Nice.
So I got my experience with vinyl in one place. And then I did the little teeny tiny extra small. And I just think that she's just
That's
the
so
prettiest little one.
Did you find that was the hardest of the three?
Yes, but I started with that one. Aren't I brilliant?
Yep.
So I have this, I don't know. I just seem to always want to do the hardest thing first. But I loved making these, and I could see making so many of these for gifts for the holiday coming up. I just think they are precious and truly a unique opportunity. And I quilted the fabric for these actually just on my home sewing machine with the soft and stable and everything. And I loved sewing with it. It was just fantastic. So those are brilliant. The second project, it's kind of like Bruce and I going to quilt shows. The first projects were really, really simple. And then I just dove in
Yep.
and did the running with scissors and used, I really wanted something that was calm, very calm. So I took our Violetta Dusty Denim and Coordinating Twilight Blue. And on the inside, I did put some accessories inside as well to show this beautiful pattern. But my background, or I should say the lining, is Vine Cream Pearl. So I just really went kind of a soft colorway, and the vinyl and all the zippers and the elastic, and I just got an amazing education. And I'd never worked with mesh. And I am actually very thrilled with the results of these. I really loved making this. And this one I also quilted at home on my sewing machine before I cut it out. So
that turned out so well. And you're going to love using that too. It's such a nice compact way to carry your tools.
Yes, and that you can't have a running with scissors without take a stand. So I made a coordinating take a stand that will hold all my projects. I don't have any projects inside, but the lining is the same color as I used before. And the straps and the beautiful, beautiful hardware. I just love this bag. So this is the small version, and I do have fabric to make a large version as well. So I'm going to make that and add that to our display on the website. So those were my projects, and I absolutely love them. And as I had mentioned to Annie on a prior conversation, you know, remember I said to you, I am, every time I look to what am I going to make next, it's like I'm hooked. So this is very good.
Forget getting her back to work, Bruce. She's going to be sewing.
We're not going to get any more garments out of Diane.
Well, so I will tell you, the one thing I forgot to mention is this last bag, I did quilt the fabric on our long arm in the office. I am teaching myself more how to use a computer-driven system. And boy, does that help with speed. I love that. So
yes, it does. And I'll show you a couple tricks when we show you some of the things we do here by combining two fabrics, using one for the lining and one for the main, but then you switch them and use that lining for the main on the other one. You can get more variety out of one big piece of fabric. So I'm going to real quick walk through some of the things we made. This is one of my very favorite patterns. This is In Control, perfect for sitting next to the sewing machine to hold all your sewing supplies. Got pockets all the way around, bellowed dividers on the inside, handles to carry it, little straps on the end so you can move it back and forth. And then we made a sewing machine cover to match it. So this is one that is based on our small size, but we customized it a little bit to fit on the Bernina machines that we have. They're older and they're a little bit different in size. So, but it's got flaps that lift up so you can reach in and grab the handle and carry your machine, a mesh pocket on one end for your foot pedal, zippered pocket for things you want to keep safe and secure, another one on the front that's perfect for putting your manual or your knee lift. And then on the back, you can either have a side opening pocket, which we like because we put our bed in there, or you can have it open on the top if your cover's big enough to hold your tray that you slide on, your slide-on tray. So that's undercover. And
that's
then,
beautiful,
of course,
Annie.
We had to do the big sister to In Control, which is Catch-All Caddy. And this is, as you can see, it doesn't have pockets on the inside. It has these bellowed dividers. So I can put something big like my cup of water in there, and it's not going to fall over. I can, carry things around, holds lots of tools, and just really perfect for organizing on your table. We took this same fabric and quilted it, or used the same fabric, actually all the way around it's exactly the same, to do our big travel bag, which is our ultimate travel bag. And this is one of our really popular patterns. Great bag for traveling. It's got handles to carry it just over your arm, or a padded shoulder strap to carry it over your shoulder. Pockets all the way around, plus pockets on the inside too. And then with the leftover fabric that we had after we made Catch-All Caddy and Ultimate Travel, we did Bowl Me Over. So if you look at this one, see if you can see on the inside, where can we see the inside of one of these pockets? On the inside, it's the same fabric as those were on the out. So that's now the lining, and the lining for those bags becomes the main fabric on this one. So one piece of quilted fabric and 3 different projects out of it. We did this one in kind of a little more monochromatic look. So we did just a solid coordinating blue, one of those, for all the handles. And I really love how that turned out on there. And then we did one more travel bag. This is our Get Out of Town duffel, and the pattern for this is written to use 3 different fabrics, a main, a lining, and a coordinate. But we didn't have a 3rd coordinate to use on this. We'd used most of that blue on the other projects, so we just used more of the main fabric and made our handles and straps and bindings to match it, and I really love how that turned out. I had never made one of these bags with using one basically one fabric on the outside, and I think that turned out great. And then we skipped all the borders that were on the pockets, and we just added a little bit of ribbon from Renaissance Ribbons on the pockets, and I think we even had enough to do a little on the carrying strap, so that added just another little bit of interest too. So we had a lot of fun sewing all of these bags. And for those of you who are watching us, if you want to get an up close and personal look at these models, if you're planning to go to either Road to California or the new International Sewing Arts Show, which are going to be in January, we're really excited to tell you that SewBatik will be at both of those shows, and they're going to have all of the models that we showed you today, plus whatever Diane gets sewn before then, along with some ByAnnie products in their booths at those shows. So leave a comment and let Bruce and Diane know if you're going to be attending those shows. Maybe if there's something in particular, ByAnnie, you want to see, let them know and we can make that happen. Unfortunately, our team is not going to be attending any trade shows for the foreseeable future, so we're really happy to know that Bruce and Diane are going to be there to share some of our ByAnnie love at those shows. And remember, too, that we love to send trunk shows out to local shops. So once Bruce and Diane are done with these models, we'll probably get them back and we'll be sending them to shops all around the country. So just ask your local shop to give us a call and we'll give them some details. So I know that all of our viewers are going to want to see some of these lovely fabrics. Bruce and Diane, can you tell us where they can find them?
Absolutely. You can find our fabrics on our website at www.SewBatik.com. And like Annie said, our first show on the show circuit again is going to be in January at ISAF and Road to California. So those will be the first two. So that's the easiest way to find us.
That's awesome. And also on your social media, don't you do YouTube and
we do
all that too?
We have a Facebook, we're on Instagram, we have Pinterest and YouTube channel as well for all of our different tips and techniques on garment sewing and quilting and piecing and whatever it happens to be.
Right. And all of those, is it just SewBatik? No space in between, yes. Sew and Batik? Perfect. Right. That's easy.
Right. That's SewBatik.
Mm-hmm. Our website.
Yep.
I think Jake had that up on the screen too. So just know SewBatik and you'll find them everywhere. That's fabulous. So Trevor has posted a few questions here that I wanted to run through real quick. Bruce, this one's for you. Someone asked, how long do the stamps last, and do they have to make multiples per motif?
The stamps last until they're dropped or abused in some way when they're being used, and the copper, which is a very soft metal, gets bent out of shape, and they either have to be repaired or after a while completely replaced. And it is not uncommon for, if especially like SewBatik that uses their designs for a fair amount of time, to have multiples made at so that they could take another one off the shelf in the middle of a production run, or in between. They make them in between our frequent reorders so that they have one on hand. Yeah.
That's great. Another question was, do you ever sell the stamps, or what do you do with them when they're done with them? Because I can see that could be something someone would really love to have as an art piece in their home.
The stamps don't come back to us. They stay at the dye house. We don't really get them unless I say I need one for a lecture or something like that. And so I really I've never been in a position to sell them because I've never received them or asked for them. Maybe it's something to consider in the future.
Yeah, I would find out about that, because I think that would be really beautiful sitting on a shelf in a home, especially for people who love to sew and use batiks. Another question was, what kind of wax is used, and is it something that's unique to batiks?
The wax that is used is a melange of coconut oil, paraffin, beeswax. It depends on how rigid they want the wax to be. The more rigid the wax, the more it is prone to cracking. Sometime and actually for the purist in Indonesia, crackling is a no-no. You know, they equate that with a defective fabric, whereas we love our crackling because it brings texture, you know, and surface interest to our fabric. But the mixture of the wax is determined by the stamping artist, and it's in direct relation to how sharp the lines have to be and how much crackling they're going to allow to occur.
Huh, that's really fascinating. Next question was, do your batiks arrive in the U.S. ready to sell, or is there more that you need to do to prepare them to sell?
Only cutting and
ready to sell.
And ready to go. That's it. They come in. Yesterday we got a shipment, and while we were recording our video for Annie's, I was putting away fabric.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's nice that it's ready to go and you don't have to package it other ways. The next question was, how long does the process take from the beginning to being ready to ship?
First, it depends if it's rainy season or not rainy season. If it's rainy season, I can't even begin to estimate, because if the sun's out, we get batik production. If the sun is not out, we don't, especially in the jersey and the wider width fabrics that require more time in the sun. Now with fabric, sometimes we can eke it out, and sometimes we can produce 2 weeks. Actually, when the chap is already prepared, if it's a reorder, it takes 2 or 3 weeks and the fabric is made. But then we have shipping concerns now, as does the rest of the world, and it departs from the harbor in Jakarta, goes to Singapore, and that's about a 6-day journey. But that's where the question marks arise. Traditionally, it only used to stay in Singapore for a couple of days. Now it can stay in excess of 3 weeks before it gets laden on to the vessel that will head to Los Angeles. And nowadays, we've all been seeing on the news the backlog of vessels that are in the Los Angeles and Long Beach harbors. Sometimes it takes 3 weeks for that boat to be brought to a pier, and sometimes it takes as many as 2 weeks for those containers to be offloaded and then undergo the customs clearing process and inland forwarding to North Dakota. That's the fast part, actually. But getting it off getting the container to the harbor, getting the container, onto the truck, that takes a long period of time.
Yeah, wow. And then you told me that the trucking company you use can only go in 1 day a week. So if they miss it, it's another whole week before you get it. So you have definitely had to learn some patience in this past year, I bet.
It's a work in process.
Yeah, I think all of us would say that. Next question was, is batik unique only to Indonesia? And are there different styles of batik? And if so, what do you call the style that we saw today?
So to answer the first question, no, there are quite a few countries, such as India, such as countries in Africa, China. Batik is produced by the Miao people in southwestern China. Batik is made in many different countries, but they do it a little differently. What they all share is the use of something, whether it's wax or in some countries a paste, to create a resist. And that resist is applied by, in this case of Indonesia or Malaysia, they use a metal chap. In some cases, that is a wood stamp, like in. We have one here. Yeah. We have stamps that are engraved out of wood, and or sometimes we have stamps that are a mix of wood and metal. The basic concept is the same, but the way they execute it is a little different depending upon the country that it's being done in. To answer the second question, in Indonesia, there are many different styles of batik motifs. Here in the United States, we've westernized the design concept. We don't, as a rule, bring in traditional Indonesian motifs. We bring in Western style into our orbit because that's what our customers are asking for. But there are multiple styles of batik in Indonesia. For example, batik kraton, batik,
You're challenging yourself.
Pekalongan, that's a town on Java that is near the water, and they have many different styles of fish and ocean turtles and ocean scene depictions. So Javanese batik historically emphasizes browns and earth tones from what was traditionally done in Indonesia to what we consume here through our westernized palate.
Huh, that's really fascinating. We had a comment from Henny, who's joining us today, and she said, I was born on the island of Java, and when I lived there, I saw my Japanese families make these, that's probably Javanese families, make these beautiful batiks. It is very hard work to make those. I have some original ones, the browns and reds that I brought with me. I have many sarongs of original batiks. Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Those
Special
are really
stuff. Always hold on to that.
Yeah, for sure. The next question was, is this process something that if someone were to visit Indonesia, they could watch and see in person, or is it pretty closely guarded?
Easily. It is not heavily guarded. There are specialized tours that are available to anyone who wants to see the process being done. Yes.
Well, I noticed the one where you said they were out when they had it and they were soaking off the wax. They were out right on the street, it looked like, right out in the open with no roof or anything.
Well, remember, it's a tropical climate, and so much of the batik making process is done without a roof over their heads. It's basically the rooms have walls, but there's no roof.
No roof.
Wow. So it's a very outdoor community.
Huh. That's amazing. Okay, another question. Will batiks fade as you wash them, and do some colors bleed more than others, as in regular fabrics?
Good questions, both. There will be color transference with batiks after washing, but much in the same way as if you take a pair of jeans that you've worn or washed 20, 30 different times, and if you put a white t-shirt in there, you know full well that there's going to be a little bluish patina that's on your white t-shirt. Color transference is just a fact of life, whether it's batik making, which uses modern fiber reactive dyes, or whether they're machine commercially dyed fabrics. You can do things that help fight against color transference. Another additive is called retain. And retain, unlike synthropol, which is a soap or a surfactant that is used to purge the dyes, retain is a chemical that will chemically facilitate a chemical reaction that bonds the dyes to the cotton fibers. And so if you have a big concern about color migration, it is very, very helpful to use retain, RETAYNE. But you need access to about 140-degree water when you're applying it, which means you have to turn up that water heater or produce it on your stove. Also, if you have high contrast motifs with your background colors, it might not be a good candidate for that because you're always concerned about the color that rinses off the background color, tainting the relatively light contrasting motif inside. Again, we go back to the white dot, red background. If you have that scenario, you probably will not use retain, you'll use synthropol because you'll be concerned that the rinse water coming off of the red dyed areas will contaminate the white elements.
That's really good advice. I did not know that about the water having to be that temperature when you use retain. I'm sure I've got some, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So probably if you were using something like red that might do it, you'd use retain when you're washing that by itself. But then when you put it in your quilt, you'd use synthropol to make sure that if anything comes out, it'd go there.
There are colors that are particularly less stable than others. Red, or anything that utilizes red in its formula, like some purples, so some browns. They are not per se unstable, but the more red that's a component part of your color becomes less stable. Bright green also is another issue, and sometimes we have troubles with black because black doesn't come out of the jar. It's a mixture of multiple colors to make black, and so sometimes if a reddish blue is used in the formula, we have to be concerned about color migration as well. But many of these, this is a big misnomer in that many of these same issues are also part and parcel of working with machine-made factories. The big difference why we have to be a little more careful with batiks is because printed fabric goes through a finishing process where it goes into a stentering machine that heats the fabric up and color sets the dyes. Well, that process is omitted from the batik making process. It dries in the sun. It doesn't go through an oven to cure it. So we have to be mindful of potential issues, and we should, respond to it by using one of those two fine products, and then we can have really wonderful enjoyment of our products, regardless of whether they were made through machine making or through hand making processes.
That's, such good advice. Next question was, do you offer anything thicker like canvas or upholstery strength fabrics as a substrate?
So that's a very near and dear question. I have the most amazing batik canvas samples that we have developed, and stay tuned.
Stay tuned. All right. Yeah, because that would be really fabulous for bags and purses and all kinds of things, or chair cushions.
Annie, of course, the pandemic has affected everybody in so many different ways, but one of the ways that it affected us is, when do you deploy your new R&D? When there are relatively few people in the marketplace, or when everybody is a part of the marketplace. We have production minimums and so on, and it's really sometimes, we've been working on a hand-dyed and batik linen for years, but we couldn't introduce it or think of introducing it during the pandemic because the market was the market was, stifled by more important concerns, and now that, we're on, the marketplace is on the rebound, our linen is in production, and I hope that the canvas is not far behind. And Annie, I'm going to send you some so you can see what we've done.
Oh, I will look forward to seeing that. Do send me something, because that sounds fabulous. Okay, 2 more questions. Is there a recommended needle for longarmers to use when they quilt batiks?
Something we can find an answer. I'm not skilled enough to give you that proper answer. So I'm going to refer you to a very, very knowledgeable educator in long arming world, which is
who does Batiks.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And then the last question was, can you apply OdiCoat to Batiks? Do you know what OdiCoat is?
I'm not familiar with it.
No.
It's something that you put on and you kind of do like a credit card and you smear it on, or you can brush it on, and it makes it waterproof. I can't imagine why you couldn't do it on Batik. I've done it on lots of different fabrics. So
sure, there's no reason that once the Batik is a stable piece of cloth that you could not do something like that.
I think the recommendation, kind of like with the laminate or vinyl, is pre-wash it, and you should be able to do anything that it's cotton.
Right.
So, batiking is just the process of adding the color and decorating. So it is cotton. So pre-wash it and test away and use it like you would any other cotton.
That's fabulous. Well, hey, you guys, thank you so much for being our guests today. I learned so much about making batiks. I have to say that it gave me a new appreciation for those fabrics, and I really look forward to working with them even more. We're so glad that you joined us today, and I want to remind everybody you can order your batik fabrics straight from Diane and Bruce at SewBatik. Please check with your local quilt shop for ByAnnie products, such as patterns and supplies. Remind them, and if they don't have them, they can certainly get them straight from us or from their favorite distributor. And of course, if you don't have a local quilt shop, you can always find them at ByAnnie.com. Bruce and Diane have partnered with us for some really awesome giveaways today. But before we do that, I have just one quick but really important announcement that I want to share. As we said earlier at the beginning, one of our goals in our SewPINK initiative is to raise funds for breast cancer research. And in past events, we always pledged to donate a percentage of sales of pink products that were sold on our website to the cause. But due to logistical challenges around the world this year, we didn't have inventory of enough pink products to support any donation like that this year. So we were really thrilled to hear that the Fat Quarter Shop made a fundraiser, and they have a goal of raising $10,000 to donate to the National Breast Cancer Foundation. We asked them if we could join their efforts, and they generously accepted. So we have set up a special SewPINK team as part of their fundraiser. And so if you learned something new, if you were inspired by some of the fun SewPINK events this year, we hope that you will consider making a generous donation to this important cause. And it's really simple to do. All you have to do is click on the ByAnnie.com SewPINK link, and you just scroll down a little bit. You'll see information about the fundraiser, and you'll see a button that says Donate Here. And to help us reach the $10,000 goal that Fat Quarter Shop has set, ByAnnie.com is going to match every dollar that is raised on that SewPINK fundraising page. So we hope that you'll join us in bringing some hope to women and their families who are suffering from breast cancer, and just know that together we can make a difference. So any amount is great, but we hope you will be generous with that. All right, so let's talk about our giveaway. Again, we want to thank you for joining us, and to say thank you for that, Bruce and Diane have partnered with us for two really special giveaways today. So one very lucky winner is going to receive everything, including fabric from SewBatik, to make their own Bow Me Over bag. So I'm going to let Diane start by showing you the fabric that she's going to include in this kit and tell you a little bit about them.
Okay. Well, we decided to also contribute to our SewPINK, which is fantastic, is the Medora Flora Valentine Pink will be our kind of main fabric for this bag, and this will be the main. We thought it would, now you can change, and the winner can change any of these if they would like, but there's yardage enough to do what you'd like. The coordinate is our Violetta Sachet Pink, and the lining would be our Medora Flora grape, because we really thought we'd bring out some of the grape color in the Valentine pink. So you'll be getting yardage to make your own bag.
Oh, those are so pretty, and that's going to make a gorgeous bag. So from ByAnnie, you will be getting the Bowl Me Over 2.0 pattern. And don't forget, this includes a coupon in it so that you get the related add-on video free. You'll get a 1 yard package of Soft and Stable, and we thought white would probably be best since that some of those fabrics are a little lighter. You'll get 2 raspberry 30-inch double slide zippers, some fusible interfacing, a package of mesh for one of the pockets inside, and some, we did Tahiti for that, and lipstick on the fold-over elastic to bind that pocket. A 3 yard package of strapping. That pattern has 2 options. You can either do short handles like this or longer handles, and you can add a carrying strap if you choose. And we figure you're going to want to do that. So we're also including all the hardware to do that, plus the magnets to close the flap. And last but not least, an acrylic base stabilizer that you can put in the bottom to stabilize it. So that is really an amazing kit. Everything you need except thread to make a really beautiful bag. And then Diane has very graciously offered another special giveaway, and I'm going to let her tell you about that.
Okay. Thank you, Annie. The second, we're going to give another gift away, and this is actually a pre-made shawl. It is made from our Batik cotton jersey knit, and I had created and posted a YouTube video on how to convert very simply a 2 yard piece of, well, actually it's a 1.25 yard piece of jersey knit into a beautiful shawl. And so you don't even have to do anything. The winner of this giveaway will simply be able to cuddle up in it and enjoy a great movie on a Sunday night. So this is what we're going to give as a second gift.
That is so fabulous, and that just looks so cozy. That would be so nice to just wrap around you while you read a book or watch TV, or just sit out and watch the snow, which is going to be flying soon for a lot of us. Already is in some places. All right, so here's what you have to do to win, and don't forget you have to do this on Facebook because it doesn't work on YouTube. First of all, leave us a comment. Tell us something you learned in today's presentation, whether you've sewn with batik fabrics before, what did you make? Do you have any extra tips to share that we didn't cover today? Which SewBatik fabric that you saw today would you like to sew with, and what would you make with it? I know I would love to make one of those t-shirts with those rayon or jersey batiks. Those sound awesome. Which ByAnnie pattern shown today would you like to make next? And then, of course, we always like hearing about any other tips or ideas you have for new patterns. Second, we ask that you tag a friend because we really want to spread the word about our weekly Facebook Lives, and so please share that with someone who you think would enjoy them. And to tag someone, you just need to type the @ symbol followed by the name that they use on Facebook. For us, for instance, it would be Patterns by Annie. A picture will pop up. You can make sure you've got the right person. If so, click on that, add your comment, and click Submit. We are going to pick winners from comments made by midnight tonight, so you've got about 8 more hours to watch and leave your comments. And then don't forget to check your Facebook messages because Trevor's going to notify our winners and ask you to email your shipping addresses. So thank you so much again to Bruce and Diane for being with us today. That was really a marathon performance that you gave us, and we really, really appreciate it. I learned so much about batiks and really appreciate it. We will be back next week at 2 p.m. Mountain Time, and we are going to have a very special guest again next week, who will be Teresa Coates, the National Educator for Shannon Fabrics. She's going to be showing some fun projects that we both made using their awesome cuddle fabrics, and she'll be sharing lots of tips for working with those fabrics. And believe me, you don't want to miss it because there's some really good tips that she has to share. So until then, happy stitching, and thanks so much for hanging in there with us today.